HTMX is getting more and more traction recently. So let's take a look today. Is it any good and how easy it will work with the Clojure in the backend? So we have this page. It is HTMX, click to edit, and then we have the form for the user information. If we click on the button, note that the page is not changed. So we basically in the like dynamic web application world. So we have now the form where we can update our values, and we can click submit, and now we see that it's changed. And if we refresh the page, we still have this information here updated because it's actually stored in the backend in a state component. What is HTMX? Instead of HTML, we have this, for example, a tag, right? And we have this href, which basically means if you click on this element, your browser will execute a request to this /blog page. But what HTMX is doing is with HTML attributes like hx post, for example, you can configure any HTML element to initiate an AJAX request. So in this particular case, it says hx post. So on the click, it will issue an HTTP post request to the /clicked path, and the response from that should be an HTML snippet, and this snippet will completely replace the other HTML element on the page, and this is controlled by hx target and hx swap attributes. So hx target means that we by ID can select element to replace, and hx swap basically means this particular one, auto HTML, means replace the entire target element. So that's how it works, and you basically not you have access to all HTTP verbs, so it's not just get and post as in standard HTML, and this can be configured on any element basically. So the installation is extremely simple. The only thing you need to do is to grab the URL of the library and add it as a CDN, or a more reliable approach is download it, put in your resources and serve it from your backend. After that, no extra lines of JavaScript is needed to build the entire application. I prepared a Clojure application here that handles the backend for us. We have a bunch of routes configured. So we have this one, HTMX click to edit, which will serve our root page. And after that, we have get for the form and put for the form. And that's basically three routes that we want to implement. I'm going to use the Hiccup library to do the HTML in Clojure backend. And from my personal view, that's the best option to work with HTML, because you're basically not restricted with any templating language, and you can use Clojure data structure to define your HTML, and after that you basically convert it into HTML string as the last step before doing the response. A quick example how that works is this body is converted to HTML string, and if we go to the REPL and we do we execute this block, and for example we want some simple HTML element here, so div something, right? As you can see, this HTML string is generated. If we want something more complex, we can like nest that somehow, like we want span, for example, and something here, but also we want to add some classes. It's here, for example, my class, right? So the result is as expected, I believe, just HTML. And it's really easy to read because HTML is basically a tree and Clojure syntax is basically a tree. So yeah, I think you can learn that in 5 minutes. Cool. So let's take a look in our root handler, right? So we created this user details component, which has a snippet of Hiccup inside, and we have a div at the top, and then we have separate divs for each row, and at the bottom we have the button to trigger the request to get the form. The URL is here, and yeah. So let's go back to the browser, and if we open our inspector network, so first of all we see this div here, right, as we've seen in Hiccup. If we go to the network tab and if we click on this button, we see a request, Ajax request, and it is get to this get form URL, right? And the response is the form, right? So this form is replacing our div. And if we go to elements again, you see on this level, it was div before, now we have the form. So the HTML changed here, and it's basically done by the library. If we go to the network again, if we do cancel, we executing a get request to our initial page, and it's this entire response is replacing our page. But if we do submit, we see this edit request, but now it's put, and the payload, the response again is the div for our user information here. You can see now the Hiccup snippet for our click to edit form, and we have this hx put on the form level, so it means that if the form is submitted, this request will be issued. And also we have the buttons at the bottom. One of those is cancel button, and it's configured with hx get to basically get the entire page again and show that. Let's change this thing to support multiple users, and I believe that will be interesting. So what I want to achieve is a list of users, not just one on this page. And if you click on one of those, we replacing that element with this form, and then we can submit and go back. And we can do that for all our users. So to start, let's change our HTML here. So where is our handler for the root handler, right? So now we want something like we want a div here, and let's say we have a class just to add a bit of padding there. And if we just duplicate that, right, we will see multiple forms, multiple rows now here. If we click to edit, we can edit them, so that's good. But it's not true. It's basically changing the same thing, right? So we want to change our state structure. If we go back here, I suggest we do something simple like the key will be ID of the user, and then we have the value, and for example like 2, right? So user 2, user 2. Now I believe this will be broken, right? Because we don't have we don't read this atom correctly. So to change that, let's say we have our users now, and it will be state. And what we want to do is basically we want to map over those users. And it will be a user here. We map over users. And inside our function, we want to return our div block like that. And the user will be actually ID, a vector ID and the user, because it's like a key value map, right? And we want user here. Let's see if that works. Yeah, that's good. We don't need this copy-pasted block anymore. The thing that we don't pass is actually the ID. So let's not overcomplicating. So we can basically say that we have ID here, and when we're passing the user, let's just sock ID inside. Yeah, okay. But now this one and this one is leading to the same URL because the ID is hard-coded there. So we want to change that. Let's do it the simplest way by formatting a string. And we want to replace this part with ID. See? So it's 1, and if we inspect here, it's 2, right? Cool. Okay, so now we have a real ID here. It still not works because we don't handle that ID on the click to edit form, right? In the click to edit handler. So right here, let's print our request from the context. So we have it here in the REPL now, and I'm searching for the path params, I believe. Yeah, so to get the user ID, we're interested in this, right? So let's say now we have our user ID, and it will be context request path params and user ID. Cool. And now, so we can do the same. So it will be users now in this state atom, right? And instead of passing the users, we want to get the user by ID. So we can do get users and user ID. Cool. I hope that should work. Of course. So we have these IDs in our state as numbers. Let's just make them strings. Or we can convert the string ID that comes from the path param to the number. But yeah, just let's keep things simple. So I hope that now should work. Let's refresh. Yep. Cancel. Cancel. Okay. So the final bit that we need to change is actually the put request, because it's still broken, I believe. Let's remove our print lines that we don't need them. Okay, so in the form, right, we want the information about ID here as well. Unfortunately, we need to... So let's say we have the user now here, right, and we're getting it by ID. But the user map itself doesn't have ID, so we want to sock user ID, user ID. Now here we should have access to the ID, and we're doing the same thing on the put URL here, right? So it will be %s to format, and we want ID here. We need to fix the logic in our put handler, because now we override the atom, and we don't want that. So let's see what we have inside the put handler. So before that, we were getting these form params, and the form params will represent the entire entire form that was submitted. But we were basically resetting the atom, and now we want to update the atom by the key, not just resetting that. Let's do the same. So we have our users here, and it will be this one, right? To pass to the user component, we want user by ID. So we want, let's say, user here. We get users user ID, and the user ID will be the same from the path params, right? So build this, and now we sock user ID. Okay, so now it's not broken, and for the other one, yeah, looks good. But we're not updating the atom. So the final bit to change is actually change the logic here, how we updating the state inside our state atom. Let's play first in the REPL. So we want swap, right? We want our atom. In the atom, we'll have something like 1, and then the state here, so like A1, right? And our swap will be a sock key and a new value, B1. Yeah, all right, so that works. Yeah, that's the beauty of Clojure, that you can quickly test things in the REPL. So now I believe if we put it here, the atom is this thing. Then we have a sock, and then we have our user ID. So I believe, yeah, I'm hating doing that, but let's just not spend too much time. So we can add it inside the let with this hack. Yeah, I usually prefer have it in a separate line, but don't want nest lets here. So the value will be form params, and the ID here will be the user ID. Let's refresh, and I hope that should work now, right? So click to edit, Andre, submit. Nope. Interesting. Oh, all right. Yeah, of course. So we derefed our atom before the swap, so it's an old state here. So what we should do is move these users after the swap, and now we should have everything working. Let's refresh. Andre, submit. Yep. Not Andre. Submit. Cool. So what I think at the end about HTMX, basically was today first time I tried to do it myself with a small application, as we've seen. But I'm actually really impressed. So just to say, I'm not a front-end developer, so I'm working with Clojure a lot, but I'm doing the backend stuff. But regarding the front end, I'm using it quite a lot in my hobby projects, And I tried a lot of things. So I was doing a bit of Clojure script, then I was learning the Elm language, so I have a bit of front end written in Clojure script, bit in Elm, and after that I basically have some plain React, but it was always a pain. And it looks like the HTMX will be a really good fit for that purposes, and I think it will work with the Clojure backend really well compared to other languages. And the main reason for that is this Hiccup library. It basically allows us to define these HTML components inside our code, and they are really like a native components for our language. So we're not reinventing a separate layer for the HTML templating. We just use, as you've seen, this tree which is basically a Clojure vectors nested and maps, and after that we put them like convert them to HTML, and this will be really easy to do to define HTMX components on the backend. That's what I see now. I see it as a really powerful tool, and I'll be definitely playing with it more. So anyway, thanks for watching for today. Hope you enjoyed. If you like the content, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. That really helps and gives the motivation. So yeah, thanks again for watching until this point. I really appreciate. Have a nice day and see you next video. Bye bye.